See Windolph's astonishing recollection of Custer's final battle. Charles Windolph, a soldier in the United States Army, fought in the Battle of Little Bighorn, serving as a private in Company L of the 7th Cavalry Regiment. As one of the few survivors, his detailed and accurate account has made him a prominent figure in American history. A German immigrant, Windolph joined the Army in 1872, and after 5 years of service, he was awarded the Medal of Honor for his bravery during the battle. Before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel to support our community. On that fateful Sunday, June 25th, around noon, we crossed the divide between the Rosebud and the Little Bighorn. Our regiment was in column of march, riding west. The troopers of each company rode 4 abreast, with a gap of 50 or 60 feet between companies. Suddenly, we halted, and Lieutenant Cook instructed Benteen to take his company, H, along with D under Captain Weir and K under Lieutenant Godfrey, to scout the hills and engage any hostiles encountered. General Custer retained troops Vents F, C, E, and L, while Major Reno led troops M, A, and G, with most of the Indian scouts under Lieutenants Varnum and Hare. Our 7th Cavalry, consisting of 600 men, was divided into detachments pursuing Indian forces through rugged terrain. We knew a sizable force of hostiles lay 12 to 15 miles west, but the exact number remained uncertain. Our Indian scouts suspected several thousand hostiles, but Custer and most officers estimated facing 1,000 to 1,500 warriors, likely poorly armed. They expected a rearguard action, allowing the Indians to escape. Instead, we faced a force potentially twice that number, outnumbering Custer's 600 men 5-1. Custer planned a surprise dawn attack on June 26th, but decided to attack immediately when hostile scouts detected his column. Benteen, leading 3 troops, rode ahead to scout. We traversed rough terrain, which proved challenging for the horses. From each successive hilltop, Lieutenant Gibson signaled back that he saw no signs of Indians. Even the troopers in the ranks thought we were on a futile mission. After 2 hours, we turned back onto Custer's trail, relieved to return to the Little Valley. We continued west down a small stream, where the lead pack mules got stuck in a quagmire, highlighting the pack train's slow pace. As we departed, we heard distant firing ahead. Captain Weir led his company, and Benteen was ahead of him. We all knew we would soon be engaged in battle. Shortly after leaving the morass, we passed a burning teepee, likely set ablaze by our Indian scouts. The horses sensed danger, growing restless. Around this time, we saw Sergeant Knipe of Tom Custer's C Troop, delivering an order for Captain McDougal to hasten with the pack mules. Benteen ordered him to return down the trail. We then spotted Trumpeter Martini, wounded but delivering a message from Custer to Benteen to bring the packs quickly. Martini, a feisty little Italian who had served as a drummer boy with Garibaldi in the fight for Italian independence, was familiar to me since he belonged to H Troop. We used to tease him good-naturedly, but never did so again after this battle. He proved himself to be a true man of mettle. His horse was bleeding profusely from a bullet wound in its right hip, but Martini was oblivious to it. Benteen ordered him to rejoin his company. I have always surmised that Benteen thought it unnecessary to send additional word to Captain McDougal, as Sergeant Knipe had already conveyed the message to bring on the pack train with all haste. In any case, Martini's horse was exhausted, and he struggled to keep up with us. The sound of heavy firing grew louder, and soon we encountered several Crow or Ree scouts driving a few Indian ponies. They shouted "Soldiers!" and gestured towards the bluffs rising to the north. We knew we were nearing the valley of the Little Bighorn, and that fierce combat was underway in the vicinity. Benteen ordered us to draw our pistols, and we charged up the bluffs at a gallop, anticipating an imminent encounter with hostiles. Upon cresting the first set of rolling hills, the river valley suddenly unfolded before us to the left. The spectacle that beheld our eyes was enough to strike fear into the hearts of the bravest men. Below us, perhaps 150 feet or more down in the valley, and about half a mile distant, figures on horseback were galloping wildly, with shots ringing out in every direction. Farther down the river, we espied large masses of mounted men, whom we suspected to be Indians. We were riding at a swift pace ourselves, and had barely caught a glimpse of this tragic battlefield when we spotted mounted and dismounted soldiers on a knoll to the north. We rode swiftly towards them, our hearts pounding with anticipation. I shall pause here to recount the fate of our comrades with Reno. Recall that around 12:15 p.m., Reno was given command of 3 troops, 17 Crow and Ree scouts, and 3 White scouts. Custer, leading 5 troops, proceeded in column to the right, while Reno's column moved to the left. Benteen, with 3 troops, was instructed to scout the rough hills to the south and west, and I, being with Benteen, did not witness the events that unfolded for the next 5 hours. However, I have heard the accounts so frequently that I shall attempt to relay them in the simplest manner possible. Please note that I was not present and am repeating the stories told by survivors. As the 2 battalions descended into the Dry Creek bottom, they would occasionally come within 50 yards of each other, and at other times be as far as 200 yards apart. Both columns trotted westward towards the Little Bighorn. Around 2 p.m., they came upon a burning teepee containing the body of an Indian warrior killed in General Crook's battle with the Indians just a week prior, less than 20 miles away. One of the White Scouts ahead shouted back to Custer that hostiles were nearby, keeping out of rifle range. Custer then signaled Major Reno to cross the creek and instructed Adjutant Cook to order Reno to cross the Little Bighorn 2 miles farther west. Then charge the Indian village to the right, with the understanding that the entire force would provide support. This last phrase has been a contentious point, debated by many, regarding the tragic events that were about to unfold. Reno led his force of 120 men, accompanied by a handful of guides and scouts, at a brisk trot, crossing the Little Bighorn ford and pausing only to water their horses and reform in troop formation on the west bank of the river. The west side of the river presented a fairly flat valley, approximately half a mile to a mile in width, leading to a low plateau in the west. On the opposite side of the Little Bighorn, the Wolf Mountains rose steeply, with coulees descending from the bluffs to the river bottom at various points. The river, roughly 100 to 150 feet wide, flowed clear and cold with a gravelly bottom. For nearly 3 miles along the west bank, the Indian camps were pitched, with each of the 5 Sioux tribes, Cheyennes, Blackfeet, and Arapahoes occupying separate circles spaced about a quarter-mile apart. To the west, vast pony herds grazed, guarded by Indian boys and squaws. It's estimated that around 10,000 Indians, approximately 1/3 of all Sioux tribesmen, were present, including 2,000 to 3,000 warriors. This is a suitable juncture to dispel a common misconception regarding the arms of the hostiles. Contrary to popular belief, not all warriors were equipped with modern repeating Winchester rifles and ample ammunition. In my estimation, half of the warriors carried only bows, arrows, and lances, while half of the remainder used assorted old muzzleloaders, single-shot rifles, and odds and ends. Only about 25 to 30% of the warriors possessed modern repeating rifles. Another important detail: Indian boys aged 14 and above accompanied the warriors and actively participated in the battle, especially in its later stages. While the soldiers wielded their single-shot 45 to 70 caliber Springfield carbines, renowned for their accuracy and lethal range up to 600 yards, they faced a critical flaw. Rapid firing caused the breech to foul, and the greasy cartridges frequently jammed, often resisting the extractor's efforts. Troopers had to resort to hunting knives to forcefully extract the empty shells, a task that claimed many lives on that ill-fated Sunday. Alongside these carbines, each soldier carried a 6-shot, single-action Colt Army revolver, the latest model available. They were instructed to carry 100 rounds of rifle ammunition and 24 rounds for the revolver, either on their person or in their saddlebags. As the troopers dismounted and every 4th man became a horse holder, chaos ensued. Many of the horse mounts stampeded, resulting in the loss of thousands of rounds of critical ammunition, especially for Custer's men. Turning our attention back to Reno's battalion, after crossing the river, they formed up in columns of 4s, with Indian scouts on their left flank. Soon, Indian horsemen appeared, galloping wildly across the valley, and the southern edge of the Indian camps came into sight. Reno then deployed his 3 troops and scouts in a skirmish line spanning the width of the narrow valley. Troop M held the right, A was at the center, and G covered the left, with scouts advancing to their left front. Major Reno dismounted his men, establishing a skirmish line with 75 yards between each soldier. As they advanced half a mile toward the Indian camp, they were met by a large group of mounted Indians who charged them with great force. For 10 minutes, Reno's men held their ground, firing steadily, but were soon surrounded by hundreds of mounted Indians, many armed with repeating rifles. Recognizing the danger of encirclement, Reno ordered his men to fall back, mounting them in good order and retreating 300 yards. But no sooner had they done so than hundreds of mounted Indians charged down upon them once more. Reno again formed his troops in a skirmish line, dismounted and fired steadily. For another 10 minutes they held their position, but the Indians continued to close in from all sides, firing at close range and inflicting heavy losses. Fearing total encirclement, Reno ordered his men to retreat to a grove of cottonwoods half a mile to the rear. Sadly, in the chaos, many troopers became separated from their companies, their horses stampeded, and the men scattered in wild disorder. It was in this moment that the highest casualties were suffered. Many troopers were shot from their horses, killed instantly, or brutally scalped. The survivors crossed the river in disarray, scrambling up a steep hill on the east bank, closely pursued by hundreds of mounted Indians. Around 15 to 20 soldiers perished in the river and along its banks. Once Reno's men reached the hilltop, the Indians began to pull back. At this crucial moment, around 2:30 p.m., Captain Weir with his D Troop arrived, followed closely by Benteen's troops H and K. Although Reno's forces were in disarray, the arrival of reinforcements brought some order. Benteen quickly assessed the situation and ordered his men to take up defensive positions. Soon, Captain McDougall's Troop B and the pack train joined them, bringing much-needed ammunition and supplies. The combined forces dug in on the hill, preparing for a desperate defense. Meanwhile, Custer had continued down the river with his 5 troops, attempting to outflank the Indian village. As they rode north along the bluffs, they encountered the main body of the enemy. Near what is now the Custer National Cemetery, the full strength of the Indian forces became evident. Custer's men were overwhelmed by the sheer number of warriors. Despite their determined efforts, they were surrounded and killed to the last man. As night fell, Reno and Benteen's forces on the hill could hear the distant sounds of battle, realizing the grim fate likely suffered by their comrades. The night passed in anxious anticipation, with occasional skirmishes as the Indians probed their defenses. By morning, the Indians began to withdraw, having won a decisive victory. The survivors of Reno and Benteen's battalions were eventually relieved by General Terry's column, which arrived 2 days later. The Battle of Little Bighorn remains a deeply significant and sorrowful chapter in American history. The courage and perseverance of soldiers like Charles Windolph, who lived to tell their story, offer a vivid glimpse into the harsh realities of frontier warfare. This account sheds light on one of the most famous battles of the Great Sioux War of 1876. Stay tuned for more first-hand accounts of various battles. Have a good day, and see you next time.